Must be my turn. So let's settle before the Lord this morning. First of all, let's do this. Most all of us, we come into church today and we come with our stuff, all the stuff that's buzzing in our heads and hearts. So the first thing we do this morning as we enter into what God would teach us is we want to, by the power of the Holy Spirit, settle ourselves before the Lord. That is, Lord, take off of my heart and off of my soul and off of my mind and off of my shoulders all those things that would distract me from hearing your voice. Father, let me hear your voice this morning. We settle ourselves before the Lord. This is such a remarkable thing God is teaching us today. For some of us, it will be almost the first time around the ring. For a lot of us, though, it isn't the first time around the ring. But it's a lap around the ring we need to take as people of the kingdom. It's this place we need to go because we live out there in the world. And out there in the world, because we're just people, out there in the world, the weight and the wonder of, if you want to call it that, and the work of the world out there, it has great influence on us. In some ways, I think that we so much live as part of it that we forget. In some ways, we're too close to the forest to see the trees. We live out in the world, we don't realize how much we're collecting the things of the world. And then God calls us together into His house. And He brings us to this moment as people that He has eternally loved in His Son. And He brings us so that He can speak to our lives that which will clear out the junk, the clutter of the world, and help us to focus on what really matters. So most people, listen to me this morning, most people want to be rich, that is. Most of us, though, we wouldn't want to say it out loud because it sounds kind of crass. Most of us, if we were honest, we would say, I'd love to be. Mostly because, so you hear it out loud, mostly because we think inside of us, we think, though we may not say it on the outside, we think that if we were rich, life would be easier, it would be more carefree, maybe I would be just a little bit happier, maybe the burdens of my life would be a little bit less. Oh yes, most of us, we like to point our fingers, don't we? Most of us, if we were honest, we would say, given a choice, I'd like to be rich. I know that we hear this screed, not creed, but screed, that somehow if we were rich, that wouldn't make us any happier. And most of us will do what? We'll listen to that, we'll nod our heads and like we're agreeing, but inside we're thinking, I don't believe that at all. Well, that might be true for some people, but Lord, give me a shot. So we lay that out here this morning. This morning, let's take a look, you and I, us people of the kingdom. Let's look at a whole nother take on this subject. This is the biblical measure of what it means to be rich. And I'll say to you, it is like no other. In fact, it is way different than how our world defines wealth. Let's say this out loud too, because it is the absolute truth. The world measures wealth in this way: dollars and cents and things. Let me do it for you again. The world that you and I live in, it measures wealth this way. It is dollars and cents and things. And then to kind of make it sound better, I guess, we'll add things, us people of the world, we'll add things like, well, if I have my health, I'm wealthy, or if I have great children, I'm wealthy. But really, that's all just window dressing. So you hear it. This is the world's definition. It is dollars and cents and things. And therefore, the more you have, the wealthier you are. The more you pile up, the more you put together, the richer you are. I want you to hear this morning, that is so distant from how the Bible describes and defines riches for us. Listen. In fact, the biblical standard of wealth is Jesus. And so you hear this morning, by the world's standards, He had absolutely nothing. If you're a Bible reader or aren't familiar, I want you to hear this today. In His earthly life, and especially in the 3 years of His Messiah ministry for you and for me, part of the character of this Christ, this Jesus of Nazareth, is that by the world's standards, He had nothing. He said at one point, the Son of Man doesn't even have a place to lay His head. In other words, as the world measured things, He was anything but wealthy. And yet, listen to me this morning, and yet this Jesus had everything that mattered. Perfection, peace, life, real life. Those categories, those things as the Bible describes them, that's what makes up real wealth. And Jesus was abundant in each and every one of them. But listen to this. If that's the standard, then you and I, every single one of us, we come from abject poverty. Let's be honest here about this too. Maybe most of all about this. On our own, where we start, and where way too many people remain, if the real definition, the divine definition, the real definition of wealth is perfection and peace and life, then I'm going to say this again. I want you to hear it with your heart. Every one of us, preacher included, we come from abject poverty. On our own, we're not perfect. God got it, we're not even close. And we are most of the time, as human beings, we're not at peace. And we don't, though we don't want to admit, we don't really have, not real life. We spend day after day after day after day doing a whole lot of dying, but on our own, we don't have real life. We come from abject poverty. Which is why our rags to riches story as people of the kingdom is so remarkable. Just think, this one who had wealth beyond limits chooses out of wondrous and perfect love to set it all aside for you and me. He takes off his crown and his royal robes. He steps off of his throne and into this world, this broken world. Jesus comes, and this one who is the owner, the creator, the owner, the holder of all riches, he lays it all aside. He puts it all to the side for you and for me. And he takes on, listen to this, loved ones, he takes on our poverty. He makes it his own. Our sin and our guilt and our foolishness and our rebellion and our brokenness and our dying, Jesus takes up in his hands and places on his shoulders and his heart and on his life. He makes it his own. He becomes, this is such a remarkable thing, he becomes poor for us. I want you to just stop and take a deep breath this morning and listen. The very Son of God, this owner, creator of all things, he lays that all to the side, and out of perfect love for you and for me, he takes on, puts on, makes his own everything that is wrong about us, all of our poverty. He becomes poor for us, so that, listen, loved ones, so that you and I can share in his wealth. In fact, this is such a remarkable thing. The riches that we enjoy, that are ours through Jesus as children of the kingdom, are the kind we can't even put a price on. To be forgiven. Completely, absolutely, unconditionally, perfectly forgiven. Have inside of our hearts and souls and our very lives this wondrous peace, this kind and grace-filled peace that comes through Christ and only through Christ. To know today in the moments of our lives that the Heavenly Father is pleased with us, that we are the joy of his heart as his children. Calmness that gives to our lives. To know today the glory lies ahead for us no matter what. To be absolutely certain in our lives that today, whatever today holds, for you and I as children of the kingdom, glory is a certainty too. That, loved ones, all of those things, we can't put a price on. What would that price tag look like? How big would it have to be? This morning, I want you to hear that every part of that, every piece of that, he gives to you and me simply out of love. He doesn't expect us to do anything for it. He doesn't demand anything of us. He doesn't have a code of behavior. He doesn't have a list of rules. He doesn't have a bunch of things we have to do to earn from him. All of these kind gifts, listen to this. He simply gives them to us out of love. And no one can take them away from us. I got to tell you a story. You'll like this. Because you're a kid, right? As in you have parents. You'll appreciate this. So as we've gotten into our dotage, that's middle age. As we've come to these years and our children have grown up, they've observed that mom and dad have things. We have some stuff. Say amen, just so you're with me. We have some stuff. We've gathered some things. And so our youngest, who might be here this morning, and God forgive me, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but it's the truth. At one point, I heard her asking her mom, well, what's going to happen to your stuff? And her mom said, well, you and your sister are going to get it. And she said, what do we have to do for it? And her mom said, underline the word here, nothing. Absolutely nothing. Well, here this morning, you and I, we are receptors of the wondrous riches of Christ. This one who became poor so that we can share in his wealth. He's going to give it, is already giving it, has already given it to us, all of it. It's all ours, and we don't have to do anything for it. And I want to repeat for you this morning, and no one can take it away from us. No one. It's ours. This is such a gift in our lives. By any measure that matters, loved ones, we are wealthy, wealthy people. So today, in light of the giving of Jesus, because he loved us enough to become poor for us, we are ones who have been and continue to be set free from some of the burdens that are part of life. Instead of grabbing onto things that are they're like clouds, they're never going to last, they're just like air, they're slipping through our fingers, instead of living for and resting on and worrying about and fretting about and reaching for. Listen, Christians, in Jesus, we're already wealthy. There's nothing that can be added nor taken away. He has given us all that we need and then some. Today, as rich people of the kingdom, we ask God to set us free from reaching for what matters not, and to help us rest and rejoice on what he's already given that matters now and will into eternity. We are wealthy people. And it just doesn't get any better than that. On this morning in his house, this is a teaching of the Lord. If you would rise, please.